computador e vários outros itens que estão aguardando um dono que perdeu ele lá no aeroporto de Guarulhos. É isso mesmo, Naka?
E faz tempo, viu, Pedro? Porque são esses 17 mil itens, eles foram perdidos, deixados no aeroporto, num período de limbo do transporte aéreo, porque foi meio que afetado tudo isso pela pandemia. São itens perdidos entre o ano de 2019, antes da chegada da Covid-19, até o fim de 2020, quando o mundo ainda estava de pernas para o ar sobre a pandemia. São 17 mil itens. O documento, com todos esses itens descritos, tem 757 páginas. Aí tem um de tudo. Tem telefone celular, tem um monte de telefone celular, tem celular de tudo quanto é marca, iPhone, Samsung, LG, tem de tudo, assim. Tem computador, tem tablet, tem itens de luxo, de fato, tem relógio Rolex, tem itens, roupas, por exemplo, da Prada, acessórios da Prada, tem de tudo. A gente separou alguns dos itens que tem nesta história. Então temos lá, olha, relógios Rolex, óculos de sol e outros itens de marcas, e aí você pode botar todas, né? Tem Prada, tem Louis Vuitton, tem muita coisa. Alianças e anéis, inclusive com diamante cravado e com nome escrito, então esses estão fáceis de encontrar, e tem até cadeira de rodas. Eu fui fazer uma busca aqui e aí eu encontrei 2 cadeiras de rodas, 2 muletas, aí tem também 20 marmitas, 107 passaportes, 270 chapéus, aí são mais de 300 anéis e alianças, tem 560 fones de ouvido, tem 1.500 óculos, e o item que mais perdeu lá foram relógios, são 1.700 relógios e 1.866 chaves. E pessoal que foi e não conseguiu entrar em casa porque as chaves ficaram no aeroporto de Guarulhos. Todos esses itens, Pedro, não estão mais no aeroporto de Guarulhos, estão num galpão na cidade de Guarulhos, porque eles são destinados ao fundo social da prefeitura. Lá no site da CNN, cnnbrasil.com.br, você encontra esta reportagem na editoria de economia com as instruções para buscar esses itens até o finzinho de janeiro. Se ninguém buscar, vai para a prefeitura como doação.
E aí a prefeitura pode vender, Naka? Pode leiloar esses itens?
Ou usar na própria.
Usar para diminuir as taxas de embarque lá do aeroporto de Guarulhos?
Aí seria ótimo, mas aí a prefeitura usa, faz um leilão ou usa para os seus próprios, por exemplo, na rede hospitalar, na rede de educação, mas tem item para tudo quanto é coisa aqui e é interessantíssimo. Assim, quem é que deixa uma muleta ou uma cadeira de roda? Se fez um milagre no aeroporto, a pessoa chegou com a cadeira de roda e foi embora sem. Como é que é essa história?
Eu fiquei me perguntando pelo Rolex. Pô, é tão difícil. Tudo bem que tem gente que tem dinheiro para ter vários Rolex, mas é tão difícil conseguir um Rolex, até conseguir comprar o Rolex
não é qualquer
difícil,
um
o cara
compra.
Já abrir mão.
Aí, uma coisa importante, Pedro, não são itens que ficaram na alfândega, tá? Não é da Receita Federal. São itens perdidos, por exemplo, no raio-x, na sala de embarque, desembarque, enfim. São itens perdidos. É o achados e perdidos do aeroporto de Guarulhos.
Perfeito. Quem perdeu a aliança provavelmente também perdeu o casamento, né? Até mais, viu? Obrigado. Bom trabalho para você. A Justiça Militar converteu em preventiva a prisão do soldado que confessou ter matado uma militar dentro de um quartel do Exército aqui no Distrito Federal. A Cabo Maria de Lourdes Freire Matos foi morta com uma facada dentro do 1º Regimento de Cavalaria de Guardas. Kelvin Barros da Silva ainda colocou fogo no local e o corpo da vítima foi carbonizado. Meu Deus do céu. Além de feminicídio, o soldado deve responder pelo incêndio criminoso, por furto de arma de fogo e fraude processual. O pedido do Ministério Público para a prisão preventiva destacou a gravidade do crime, o risco à ordem pública, a disciplina e a hierarquia militar. Em depoimento, o soldado confessou ter matado a vítima dentro do estúdio da fanfarra do regimento na última sexta-feira. Segundo ele, a discussão foi motivada por supostas cobranças de Maria de Lourdes para que ele terminasse o relacionamento com a namorada. Kelvin contou que a vítima teria sacado uma arma de fogo, mas que ele conseguiu acertá-la com uma faca. A Universidade Estadual de Londrina, no Paraná, concedeu pela primeira vez uma diplomação póstuma. A homenagem foi feita à estudante Júlia Beatriz Garbosi Silva, que cursava Ciências Sociais na instituição e foi assassinada pelo stalker de uma amiga em 2023. Gabriela Garcia traz os detalhes direto de Porto Alegre. Boa tarde, Gabi. Bem-vinda. Me explica um pouco mais dessa história. A homenagem é bonita, mas a situação é muito triste, né?
É sim, Pedro. Boa tarde para você, para quem nos acompanha. Foi um crime brutal que aconteceu em Londrina em 2023 e agora a reitora da UEL, a Universidade Estadual de Londrina, entregou esse diploma póstumo aos pais da Júlia, essa vítima desse crime bárbaro, os pais dela que são Everton e Angelita. De acordo com a universidade, esse ato foi uma forma de honrar a memória de mulheres integrantes da comunidade universitária que foram vítimas de feminicídio. Essa foi a primeira vez que a instituição concedeu uma diplomação póstuma e atendeu a uma solicitação feita pelo Observatório de Feminicídios de Londrina e pelo Laboratório de Estudos de Feminicídios. Relembrando esse caso muito triste que aconteceu em setembro de 2023, a estudante Júlia Beatriz Garbosi Silva tinha 23 anos, estava cursando o 5º semestre de Ciências Sociais na UEL, quando foi brutalmente assassinada a facadas por um homem que foi apontado como stalker, perseguidor de uma amiga dela. No dia do crime, a Júlia estava com essa amiga e o namorado da amiga em uma casa em Londrina, quando foi então assassinada por esse homem, que foi identificado como Aaron Dantas, ele que nesse momento está preso no Complexo Médico Penal de Curitiba, e a Júlia agora recebendo essa homenagem, esse diploma póstumo da UEL. Pedro.
É um alívio para a família, né, Gabi? Mas não tenho dúvida nenhuma de que são familiares que sofrem até hoje com a saudade da Júlia, que infelizmente foi vítima desse crime bárbaro lá em Londrina, no Paraná. Obrigado, Gabi, pelas suas informações. Até mais. Notícias do esporte agora. A Fórmula 1 tem um novo campeão mundial. O piloto britânico Lando Norris, da McLaren, conquistou o título pela primeira vez. Ele terminou a prova em Abu Dhabi na 3ª posição, atrás de Max Verstappen, que foi o primeiro, e do companheiro de equipe Oscar Piastri, que ficou em 2º. Mesmo assim, ele superou os dois no número de pontos e se consagrou campeão mundial. O título mundial de construtores já havia sido conquistado pela McLaren. E hoje de manhã, a skatista Raíssa Leal, a Raicinha, conquistou a Street League, principal circuito de provas de skate no mundo. A celebração do título aconteceu em São Paulo. A brasileira de 17 anos venceu a etapa final do circuito, que foi disputada no ginásio do Ibirapuera. Quase 10 mil pessoas acompanharam Raíssa conseguir as melhores notas em uma competição que contou com 4 japonesas, 3 delas medalhistas olímpicas e uma australiana. Raíssa Leal já tinha vencido a Street League em 2022, 23 e 24 e se tornou tetracampeã do torneio. A primeira tetracampeã do torneio, Raíssa Leal, sempre espetacular. Eu vi a prova de manhã, ela foi demais, uma emoção enorme. E na Alemanha, centenas de pessoas vestidas de Papai Noel participaram de uma corrida de rua. Adultos e crianças competiram no evento que aconteceu na pequena cidade de Münchendorf, no leste do país. O único requisito para participar era, evidentemente, a roupa de Papai Noel e a 14ª vez que a cidade recebe essa corrida. Os participantes, estimados em cerca de 900, são separados em categorias de distância entre 2,5 km e 10 km. A final do percurso, todos ganharam vinho quente ou chocolate. Afinal de contas, a criançada também participou da corrida de Natal, todo mundo vestido de Papai Noel. Não deve ser fácil correr 10 quilômetros com a roupa de Papai Noel, se bem que estava frio pra caramba lá na cidade alemã. Fique agora com o No Lucro, com o CEO da Ford, Jim Farley. Pense bem, pense CNN. A gente volta em breve, ao vivo, com as principais notícias do Brasil e do mundo. Até mais!
Pense bem. Pense CNN.
No Lucro CNN. Apoio. No Empresas. Sua rotina pode ser mais que apagar incêndios.
Oi, gente, estamos começando mais um episódio de No Lucro CNN. Logo de cara eu já preciso justificar para vocês que a gente não está no estúdio. É a primeira vez em todas as temporadas que o No Lucro faz uma gravação externa. A gente saiu dos estúdios da CNN na Paulista e a gente veio até aqui a Zona Sul de São Paulo, na sede da Ford, porque a gente está tendo o prazer de ser a primeira empresa de comunicação brasileira a poder gravar com o CEO global da Ford. Então a gente tem o prazer de anunciar no Lucro de hoje a presença do Jim Farley. Jim, it's a great pleasure.
Nice to be here.
To have you here in our show.
Bom dia.
Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, as we say here in Brazil. You
Yes.
was born in Argentina.
Yes,
You were just
BA.
telling me.
Yes.
Really?
Yes, I lived there for first almost 10 years of my life. My father started Citibank in Latin America. He lived in BA for 20 years, so my sisters were all born there too. So anyways, there's a lot of football rivalry we could talk about.
A little bit. I don't know if it's the best time to talk about soccer here in Brazil. You know? We can talk about it just a little bit if you want. But first of all, every time we start a conversation with entrepreneurship or a celebrity or everyone that sits in the chair besides me, I like to ask this person to present himself. So it's the same thing I'm gonna make to you.
Okay.
So who are you? Every time you wake up and look to the mirror, what do you see? Who is the Jim Farley?
I'm a pretty simple guy. I'm a car person.
Always.
My
Always me.
nickname as a kid was Jimmy Car.
Really?
I was at a Mustang, but cars have been the most important thing in my life other than my family. I worked for Phil Hill, our first American Formula One champion, put myself through graduate school as an upholstery man. I've had every job in the car business. I've worked for multiple car companies, but my grandfather was an hourly employee from Ford. So the second thing I would say is I'm from a simple background.
Great.
He was a factory worker, and we were very close. And unfortunately, he died before I came back to Ford. Let's say that when I told him that I was going to Toyota after graduate school, he said, okay, but you're not so welcome in my house.
Really?
I came from a Detroit family.
Oh.
And my father was a naval officer in World War II. Went to Argentina. So going to Toyota was a bit of a black sheep moment.
Really?
But coming back to Ford 15 years ago was something that I'm very proud of. And I'm basically a grandkid of a factory worker. That's who I am.
So you were a great Mustang fan, right?
Yes, I am my whole life, yes.
And now,
yes.
you know, we're in front of the Mustangs, the production of the Mustangs.
Yeah,
right?
my first new car was a Mustang. I drove across the country to go to UCLA in my GT Mustang. My son has a Fox body Mustang. We work on it together.
Oh, amazing.
Mustangs are kind of for us and our family, a symbol of freedom, of road trips across the United States. So I drove across the country when I was 15, before I had my driver's license in my Mustang. It was a 1965 Mustang. I had no driver's license, no insurance, and I drove across the country. My parents were pretty surprised when I showed up in Michigan. What are you doing here? You're supposed to fly here.
Kids don't do that.
Don't
okay,
do that.
Nowadays,
yeah, don't do that. It's a bad idea.
Please.
But that was the moment I went from being a boy to a man in my Mustang. Kissed my first girlfriend in a Mustang.
Really?
Yeah.
Great memories, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now it's 2025, and you were the CEO of Ford,
Yes.
Globally. So how an executive like yourself today look to the industry, to the car industry, because it's probably one of the industries that is facing the biggest changings, on daily basis. Everything is going so fast, and nobody knows exactly what's going to happen in the future for the next 10 years, probably, right? We are gonna probably look just electric cars on the streets, or don't, or hybrid cars. Most part of the time we have a company that says, okay, now we're gonna have just electric cars. Oh,
Yep.
well, no, we're gonna wait for 10 more years.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So in your opinion, what's gonna happen for the next 10 years, and how's the industry nowadays?
Well, it's for sure the most important part of our company's history, other than the founding.
Mm-hmm.
This is the most exciting moment in the car industry.
I agree.
I've waited my whole life for this moment. We have software-defined vehicles for the first time. Our electric architectures, we can have a vehicle can be a digital device in your life.
Like a computer, right?
Yes, it is exactly what it is.
Exactly.
It takes pictures. it also has the social, it has the social, but also the geographic risk of an intelligent machine that rolls. So the politics of, even aside from electrification and rare earths, the politics of cars is about to change completely because it's software defined. We also have this journey on lower CO2, which we thought was either a hybrid or an all electric. We now see all these individual partial electrification solutions. And then of course it's still an emotional product. I like to say we don't sell shampoo. We sell an incredibly emotional product. And to me, all those things come together at this moment in time. And my job is to allocate capital, to make the right choices, talent and capital, to reinvent the company.
And it's not easy to do, right?
No,
So it's
no,
very
that's okay.
complicated. So in your opinion, where Ford need to go, or the whole industry, I mean, right? So we need to go definitely right now for the electric future,
Yes.
or we have to wait a little bit more?
Well, I think the answer for Ford is different. We're not like the other car companies. We've been around for 125 years. In the US, we're the only car company that didn't go bankrupt. We're a different company. And I believe Ford's at its best when we do what we do naturally well. So we do trucks and commercial, and we do emotional products. Those are the two core elements of our strategy. And of course, we can wrap software and services around that, but that is the basics of our business. We believe we've always taken a measured approach to electrification. We can no longer be an ICE-only company. We've been number 2 in EVs in the US to Tesla for 2.5 years. And the Chinese are the dominant brands, not Tesla, of the EV world. And so places like here, like our trucks, we have to partially electrify, and we have to have competitive costs with the Chinese, who in my lifetime will be the most important competitors in our industry. I also believe that we have to invest in electrical architectures where we can create that software-defined experience. It would be a lot cheaper to not do that. There are a lot of customers who don't want a software-defined vehicle. But if we don't move forward on electrification and software, we will find ourselves behind, and it's existential. Like we won't exist in 10 years if we don't invest in both. And that's really where we're going as a company. The subtlety of making the right bet on electrification, the right amount of investment in technology, and the right appeal on the brand direction and the execution of the product is really the difference between success and failure.
Great. When you talk about these companies, especially the Chinese companies, you have very honest opinions about them.
I do.
Right?
I do.
You talk all the time. I heard a lot of interviews that you telling things exactly the same you just told me right now. We are behind.
Yes.
So how important you think is to say that, to everyone listen in order to look to other competitors in the market. And most part of them are just, oh no, we are the best, we are amazing. And you say, no, we are behind. You have to face that and work to have better, systems, better technology. So who are leading exactly this championship about electrification and technology, in your opinion, nowadays?
Well, I think there are global brands now emerging from China that were regional only, that are indigenous to China, the Geelys, the Great Walls, the Cherries, and of course BYD. I kind of think of talking about transitions and being transparent about it the same as the story of our Latin America experience at Ford. Many years ago, we thought we'd JV the business with Volkswagen. We found out that didn't work. We tried to do it ourselves, and for a variety of reasons, it didn't work. So, 4 or 5 years ago, we got real with our situation here, especially in Brazil. And we were all very proud of the business, but we restructured. It was so painful. It was one of the most difficult decisions I've made in my business career. But now I look at my team and we're thriving. We're growing again, we're profitable, and we can't take any of that for granted. I think the same thing can be said about the company, about being honest around where we really are as a company. No one is a bigger cheerleader than Ford, than me. On the same token, you can't beat your competitors if you don't respect them. And I believe that these companies have been working, in BYD's case, for 20 years on all electric cars. And they are smart, and they are focused, and they are global, and they want our business. And the only way to face them is to do it our own way, but to be realistic about the exciting journey we have to beat them. And to do that, you have to respect them. And I do.
All the time, right?
Yes.
Gente, vamos fazer um intervalo muito rápido nesse papo super especial com o CEO global da Ford, Jim Farley, em visita aqui no Brasil, no Lucro CNN, em volta daqui a pouquinho.
Você escolhe onde quer chegar com seu negócio, a gente simplifica o caminho. No Empresas, N possibilidades.
Hoje, no WW Edição Especial, qual a pior causa do atraso brasileiro? E as respostas com o cientista político professor do INSPER, Carlos Melo, Marcos Lisboa, economista e ex-secretário do Ministério da Fazenda, e o cientista político e professor da Unesp, Marco Aurélio Nogueira. WW Edição Especial, hoje, 10 da noite.
Vocês me conhecem pelo sorriso, pela alegria, pelas surpresas no meu palco. Mas hoje, o Faro veio falar sério e pedir a sua ajuda. No sertão, a chuva não vem, a fome aperta, a sede maltrata. Milhares de famílias dormem sem ter o que comer. Por isso que eu apoio o trabalho dos amigos do bem, que levam oportunidade, esperança. Vamos juntos mudar essa história? Doe! Seja um amigo do bem. Acesse doar.amigosdobem.org.
Estamos de volta com o Lucro CNN hoje num papo mais que especial com o CEO global da Ford, que está em visita no Brasil. E a CNN Brasil e o No Lucro são os únicos programas, a única emissora brasileira que conseguiu conversar com ele. Então, bora continuar esse papo com o Jim Farley. Ford has something that they don't, definitely,
Yes.
which is tradition,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You're a 125 years old company,
Yes.
right? You created the assembly line, which is used even nowadays, right?
Yes.
So you have a huge challenge right in front of you to keep this company technological, to
Yep.
keep this company,
Yes.
ahead when you talk
Yes.
about the innovation.
Yes.
How do you do that?
Wow, that's a great question. I think the way we do it is the way we always have done it when we were courageous. When we launched the first V8 in our industry, we had that team quit the company, go to Greenfield Village, and for a year, in secret, they developed about 20 or 30 different V8s until we found the one that we wanted. And they had to quit the company to do it. I think the only way for us to compete with BYD in our home market, for example, in the US, is we created a Skunk Works group in California, some Formula One and Tesla people. My badge didn't work in the building. We gave them all the rights. They used all the most modern design software. They had no prejudice. And the reason why I knew that was the right thing to do is when we took apart the Model Y, Model 3 when it first came out, and the Mach-E, our most successful electric, and Tesla's, their wiring loom was 1.6 kilometers shorter and 70 pounds lighter and $200 battery, lower cost battery, just to haul around the wiring harness. When I saw that, I said, my internal combustion team, when they source a wiring harness, they don't think about the battery as a cost. And so we have a prejudice. We won't spend extra money on wiring harness to lighten it. So we have to do different math. We need different skills. We need different, where our prejudice is too high. To catch up and beat BYD, we can't do it with cheaper batteries. We need an LFP battery in Michigan, which we have, so we can get similar battery costs. But to beat them, their product made in Mexico, we have to out-innovate them, which we have, and that vehicle will be coming out in a year and a half. 95% of the parts are quoted, and I'm really excited about that product launching. Metaphorically, that's what we have to do around the company. Here in Brazil, 40% of all of our cost engineering in the company, this is the first year we've taken $1 billion out of cost, 40% was done here in Brazil and Bahia. This team here is literally the best at Ford at taking cost out. And you can imagine thinking about how simple Salvador and Bahia is, giving advice to the engineers in Dearborn, saying this is how we need to get cost out of our company. That to me is beautiful.
But it's why you keep this innovation center here in Brazil, even after closing the factory here,
Yes.
right? So it's very important to keep these,
Yes.
brains here,
Yes.
thinking the company,
Yes.
even if you don't product the assemble the
Correct.
cars here anymore, right? So why you keep these professionals here?
Because they're world class, because
Yeah.
they're good and they're creative and they're hungry and they want to change Ford as Brazilians. They want to have an impact on the company. They take great pride in their work and they're very good at it. But why shouldn't I do that? Why shouldn't I do that?
Perfect. And it helps the whole company, right? It helps
Of
the
course.
company globally, right?
Of course. It's so interesting that we bring this up because, our global vans are engineered in the UK, but we don't produce anything there. Same thing for Australia. The Ranger, which is absolutely mission critical for Latin America, is engineered in Australia, but we don't make any trucks in Australia anymore. This is something we found as a company, that just because we can't make locally doesn't mean the engineering team or the supply chain team isn't world class. They are world class. So why get rid of everyone when they're world class? We've learned this lesson 3 times.
Great. And are the Brazilian engineers different from others?
Yes.
There's something that we we have and the others don't?
For sure.
What?
Better coffee.
Yeah,
No.
definitely. Yeah, the best coffee in the world.
Seriously, I would say the creativity and the deep appreciation for the competitiveness of, in this case, the Chinese. I find the Brazilian engineers, after our restructuring, to be so laser focused on the competition and knowing what kind of fitness level we need to get at. That's why they're so valuable for us. They have the right cultural orientation competitively and benchmarking, and they have a creative spirit that you can't find in other places. We are, as a company, we are running into the Chinese here. It's not going to happen in America or even Europe. It's happening right here and in Thailand and in South Africa, and we have to stand our ground and make our unique brand bet on off-road and work. But the basic cost delivery of our industrial product has to be fully competitive with them. And this is where the fight is, right here.
You told me about probably one of the hardest decisions that I have to do when you change all the business model here in Brazil, closing the factory, right?
Yes.
So it was something that it was, very strong for us here in Brazil because everybody knows Ford around here, right?
Yes.
Even when we were little kids, we heard about the industry. I worked there inside the company, the factory when I was.
Thank you.
As soon as I left the university,
Thank you.
I worked there for a little bit. I love this place, and for all Brazilians was a tough moment, right? But now, when we look today as a business model, everything, makes sense.
It does.
In terms of the numbers that we say, the Ford is profitable again here in Brazil, and the future it looks much better, right?
Yes.
So, for the ones that complain a lot when you decided to close the factory, what could you say nowadays? Like, look, if you didn't do that time in the past, some years ago, what would happen to Ford in Brazil if we still have the company running nowadays?
There are so many examples in our industry of companies that used to be global that closed shop and went home. Some are in Detroit. I would say to those people, thank you. Because of your sacrifice, because of your hard work in the past, you gave us the rights to reinvent the company. And it's upon that foundation that we can build a new company. Without your hard work, and in some sense your sacrifice, we could not be the company we are now. But also please acknowledge that sometimes change comes in very awkward moments where you have to revolutionize the company's business model. And I feel as a leader, there is no worse day for me than we have to restructure a business, where we have to get real with the business model, that it's not competitive, that we don't have rights to win. And it's difficult because it impacts so many individual people. I can't imagine how much pride you had and also how much sadness you must have had when you read the news that Ford would not make here in Sao Paulo. But businesses are not social institutions. We have shareholders that expect us to do our jobs as leaders, and sometimes that requires us to restructure. As long as there's a brighter future, what I'm so impressed with is that our team did that with empathy and respect for all the team members. I've seen a lot of companies just restructure and do it in a brutal fashion without paying attention to people. We did it just the right way, I believe, as empathetic as we could with the respect that they deserve. And then we got busy building a better company. And now we have I would say, we're 2 or 3 minutes into a new match. We have 88 minutes to go, and we're starting to pass the ball down the field towards the goal of our competitors. And it feels fantastic, but we can't forget the people who made the sacrifice.
Great. And what lessons did Ford learn from this experience, right? So is there something that you replied to other countries as soon as you rebuild this business model here?
Yes, it wound up being a kind of global moment for us. We wound up using the same model in India and even in China. And I think because of that, we have a vibrant China export business and we have a vibrant business here. It's still growing. We still are, in the first 2 minutes of the match, but it seems very exciting again. I think what we learned is we have to have world-class product. When I was here, when I joined the company, EcoSport wound up being a very innovative product for the globe for Ford. But the second one was not as exciting or innovative. We tried to make it global. I think what we learned through that is that regional orientation is still very important. We can't get so in love with the global approach to the business that we lose the appreciation of the creativity and unique market demands here in Latin America, which we got away from. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, it's not one or the other. Ranger's been incredibly successful. We're now number 2 in the pickup market in the globe behind Hilux. I think we were 15th when I joined the company because we invested in a global Ranger made in Argentina. And that's been a global success. But when it comes to passenger car business, this is a unique place. And we learned that we have to rediscover our roots about paying attention to the local market, not just having always having a global solution. It wasn't the right direction. And I think for me as a leader, I do not like complacency. I learned that whenever you feel comfortable, you should be looking over your shoulder.
Something's happening besides you that you are not,
Correct.
looking properly, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What are you going to face in the future here in Brazil, and how big is Brazil for the company?
Well, I think, our success with Ranger is very encouraging to us. We now have an off-road brand. I mean, I remember how proud we all were with Troller, that it was a globally recognized, off-road icon. I hope that we can build the best off-road brand in Brazil. That when people think about going back to nature or driving for fun, whether it's Daniel Ricciardo or anyone, that they think of Ford as the most aspirational, best technology for going off-road and discovering nature. And on the other hand, I hope and expect here in Brazil that we have the best work vehicles and services surrounding the work vehicles, that anyone who does work with a vehicle would trust Ford, either with the vehicle or with the service, financing the vehicles or software for productivity or getting the vehicle maintained, that Ford would be a leader in both of those areas. And I think we have all the rights to do that. Mm-hmm. We now have the tools to do that. We just have to invest.
Great. What would you say to the people that still nowadays thinks that Ford left Brazil, which didn't happen, right? So
yeah.
We have some people say, oh, okay, Ford is not here anymore. No, Ford is still here, but
yes.
we just don't have the factory anymore, right?
Yes.
So what would you say to these people?
Go meet our Bahia engineers in Salvador. Yeah. Go meet our dealership team. Go meet the world-class people who are helping Ford face the Chinese globally, not just in Brazil. Mm-hmm. Please meet the Brazilians at Ford, mm-hmm. who are doing global work now. You will have no doubt, not only have we not left, but we're a thriving company. That doesn't ignore what we had to do, but I think if we do our jobs right, no one will ever question Ford being in Brazil again when they think of an off-road vehicle or work vehicle.
Perfect. When I talk about Brazil globally,
yes.
we are talking about a huge country with
yes.
a huge market,
yes.
but it's not the richest
yes.
country
yes.
in the whole world, right?
Yes.
But when you rebuild the business model, you decided not to make the popular cars, what we
yes.
call here in Brazil
yes.
anymore. Even in a country that is not that rich.
Yes.
But it worked.
It did.
Right?
Yes, it did.
The numbers say
yes.
it to themselves, right? So it worked.
Yes.
Why that happened? Because I think it's a great lesson for all the companies that are here in Brazil. So it's not a rich country, so we have to produce just cheap products.
No.
And you show
yeah.
that that's not true.
No, it isn't true. Brazil is so diverse and it has so much to offer and has such a vibrant community that's diverse that you can find people who use vehicles for work and they're not cheap and cheerful vehicles. Of course, you could find those too. And I think Ford is naturally inclined to do those kinds of vehicles really well. I think for other companies, please don't think of Brazil as a monolith. It is not that kind of country. It's a country filled with opportunity, but you have to know what your brand should feel like, should represent, and then have a profitable approach to the business. And if you do that, I think Brazil is one of the most important countries in the world. I see it very different than India or lots of the other so-called BRIC countries. I don't think that term applies anymore to Brazil. I wouldn't be surprised if we sell a $400,000 US GTD here someday, or a $150,000 Raptor R, like Daniel is probably driving. I don't think that's out of the question. Ford's a strange brand in the sense that when people think of it, they think of an affordable vehicle like a Model T or a car or something. But we're also a strange company because we have no problem selling a supercar. And it's very unusual to have a brand that's flexible. So if you have a brand that's flexible, why don't you use it to your advantage? That's what we found in Brazil.
And we just have to look at the numbers of how many Mustangs you sell here. It's a
Yes,
lot, right? So
yes.
it's crazy, right?
I think we're outselling Porsche 911 some months.
Yeah.
Which I take particularly pride in.
It's a lot, right?
Yes,
It's huge. And Porsche sells a lot here in Brazil as well.
They do.
It's a different market for
I'm
them.
on the board of Harley.
Yeah.
Brazil is one of the most important markets for Harley-Davidson.
So myself, I don't understand these numbers, you know?
Because Brazilians love cars. They love emotional objects like motorcycles and cars, and no surprise that Formula One is so popular here.
Yeah.
Yes, you have great drivers, amazing drivers, the best drivers, some would argue, but you have go-kart tracks, and you have people who are passionate about motorsports. The WEC race at Interlagos, one of the best attended WEC races. I think you have a deep cultural connection with cars.
Bora fazer um intervalo muito rápido nesse episódio super especial de No Lucro CNN. Pela primeira vez a gente saiu do estúdio para dessa vez gravar com Jim Farley, CEO global da Ford, que está em visita aqui no país. No Lucro volta daqui a pouquinho para saber muito mais sobre o futuro da empresa da indústria automobilística. A gente volta já já.
Você sabe, na hora de investir, você precisa saber com quem quer contar. Com a maior gestora privada de recursos do Brasil. Ou com quem tem mais de 250 bilhões de reais investidos no exterior pelos clientes. Ou com quem foi eleito o melhor time de research do país. Itaú, mais do que um banco, mais do que uma corretora. A powerhouse de investimentos do Brasil. Invista onde grandes fortunas investem. Invista com o Itaú.
O esporte e o mundo dos negócios nunca andaram tão lado a lado como hoje em dia. Clubes virando empresas, criações de novas ligas, negociações milionárias. Por isso, um bom papo com quem entende e faz parte do assunto é fundamental para o futuro do esporte. CNN Esportes S.A. Comigo, João Vitor Xavier. Todo domingo, 9h15 da noite.
Gente, Claro Multi tá na sua e tá com tudo. Agora vem com o Chat GPT Plus por conta da Claro. Isso mesmo, Chat GPT Plus. Ai! Cria uma brincadeira em que meus filhos, com as próprias mãos, resolvam o mistério da bagunça da sala.
Claro Multi tá na sua, com a nova geração da fibra, o 5G mais rápido do Brasil. E agora com Chat GPT Plus por conta da Claro.
Assine já.
Estamos de volta com o Lucro CNN, num programa super especial. A gente saiu do estúdio para gravar com o CEO global da Ford. A CNN Brasil é a única emissora com quem o Jim vai conversar nessa visita por aqui. E ele nunca conversou com nenhuma outra emissora de TV brasileira. Então, realmente é um episódio muito especial e vamos continuar entendendo desse executivo tão importante para onde vai a indústria brasileira e em que momento a Ford está, principalmente aqui no Brasil. We have a section in our show that we call self-sabotage.
Okay.
Where we like to ask our guests if that happens with them, even if they are CEO of huge companies as yourself, you know. Nowadays, in your position, does it happen to you sometimes? That little voice that says, no, it's not gonna work. You're gonna wake up this morning, it's not gonna work, you know, you have to give up. Does it happen to you sometimes?
Of course.
Really?
Any honest leader will say, you know, because there are no guarantees. And as a CEO, the bets you make or not, that work or not play out over the course of many years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's only history, only in retrospect you could say that was a good decision or not. I mean, I don't have many regrets. You know, the EV market changed a lot. And certainly if I had to do it over again, I would know a lot more. I would say but I think your question was more personal to me.
Yeah.
And I would say I come from the school of brutal honesty in the sense that I believe it's always worthwhile to give your competitors more credit than maybe they are due. And when I decided to drive a Xiaomi, Chinese car in Detroit, and talk about it, I think a lot of people were surprised. Why would a CEO of a car company as fantastic as Ford talk about a Chinese electric car? Why would they drive that? And to me, it was such an odd question because of course you would want me to drive that car. But, you know, maybe I had some doubts about talking about it publicly. I think a lot of other leaders would. But I know my authentic self. I needed to send a message to all the employees at Ford. We have to take these people seriously. We can't ignore, like we did Tesla. We can't ignore Toyota. We can't ignore Hyundai Kia. But this one is existential for the company. You may not have ever heard about Xiaomi, but you now have. And I'm putting you on notice as a CEO that I expect you to do a better job than they're doing.
And this way you can be sure that if you have an employee driving a Ford car,
yes,
it's because he really wants to drive a Ford car.
That's right.
Because it's an obligation, right?
Correct.
That's the way you do it. It's a culture process, right?
Yes.
And it's
but
very important.
Did I have doubts? Because as a public figure promoting the brand, we should be the biggest brand ambassadors there are.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we're also a leader of people. And we're in this most glorious time of the car business where everything is changing.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to make the calculus, the pluses and minus. Should I talk about this? Or should I pretend it didn't happen and just talk to my direct leaders? And I decided to. Did I have self-doubt at that moment? Absolutely.
When you talk about this technology we are facing,
yes,
we have to think about, I mean, myself, I love the V8 cars.
Good,
I love Mustangs, the huge engines,
Yes.
you know. Are we gonna have space for these motors, for these huge blocks in the future? Or, you know, we are probably looking to the last Mustangs V8?
Not while I'm around.
Yeah.
Not while Bill Ford is around.
Thanks so much. I'm very happy to hear that.
I think, look, Ford is not like the other companies in a way. We do what we do because it's worked. And Mustang, other than 911, I mean, Mustang and 911 are kind of the two vehicles, the sports vehicles that have never changed. We're the best-selling sports coupe in the world. Porsche's been doing their thing for a long time. And, you know, we never left the market.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been easy to. So I think the coupe, the Mustang coupe, 5-speed V8 is a kind of spiritual thing in the company. You could do a lot of design reviews, but if I took everyone watching us have this conversation in the design review for a Mustang coupe, you could hear a pin drop because we all know what's at stake. We all took road trips in these cars. We all have incredible hopes that this emotional product that's been in movies and music and affected all of our lives. I talked to the King of Spain. He said his favorite trip in a car was in a Mustang from LA to San Francisco when he graduated from law school. The King of Spain. The same thing would be true of my factory worker grandfather. No, I think as long as we don't make shampoo. We make Mustangs, we make Broncos, we make Rangers, we make F-150s, we make emotional products. And we will always be on the forefront of new technologies. Software-defined vehicles, new zone electric architectures, great electrification powertrains, but there are certain things that are fundamental to our identity as a company. And the Mustang V8 is one of them.
But probably we're going to have in the future some legal obligations
Sure.
about the electric vehicles,
Sure.
about the V8 big blocks and
Sure.
things like that. When this happens, you can't produce V8 blocks anymore.
Yes.
Probably it's gonna happen sometime, right?
Maybe. When that happens, maybe we will restore old ones for people.
Okay.
As a
Makes
business,
sense.
May not be a big business, but I think it'll be important. And look, Mustang, we have the Mach-E Mustang now. It's an electric Mustang SUV. The number 2 best-selling SUV, electric SUV in our country for many years.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Mustang.
Yeah.
0 to 60 in 3 or 4 seconds.
It's different.
Yeah, it's different.
It's almost an SUV, right?
Yeah. But nothing stays the same.
Yeah.
And we are very excited about modernizing Bronco and Mustang and our pickup trucks. The F-150, the best-selling vehicle in the United States for 47 years. We have an electric one.
Mm-hmm.
We have a hybrid one.
Mm-hmm.
We have a gas one. And we'll probably have other powertrains in the next one.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, we're always going to invest in the future. But it shouldn't change our DNA. When you get in a Mustang, even if it's electric, it better thrill you.
But the V8 sound, it's different, right?
Yes, I agree. I agree. Yeah, no.
The sensation is completely different.
I'm not
right?
selling mine.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, let's talk about the pickups that
Sure.
you just said about. You just announced the hybrid Ranger.
Yes.
For our market, and
Yes.
it's something very new for us.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
And the pickups market, it's completely different from other cars, right?
Yes,
so
it is.
do you think it's the way that you have to?
For sure.
To take the hybrid pickups, maybe to like a bridge to go to the electric ones, or
Yes.
it's different when you talk about
Well,
pickups?
that's a great question. I think how we look at it is we look at people's duty cycle, how they use the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And each duty cycle requires a different electrification solution. If you travel really long distance, it's going to be many years before the charging electric infrastructure is there in a country like Brazil. It's getting better, but it's still difficult. An EREV or a PHEV makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You go all electric for maybe 50 or 75 or 100 miles. Then when you take a long trip, you have a combustion engine. You don't have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
And also for trucks, a lot of people tow. Electric is not good for towing. As soon as you put something behind you that's heavy, the electric batteries, they are not efficient for that.
Really, never had this experience.
No. So a PHEV is a much better solution for a truck.
Mm-hmm.
It's more flexible. It's the right solution. But just because it's a PHEV or a hybrid doesn't mean we can't innovate. We can make the PHEV really fun to drive because the torque is instantaneous with a PHEV. And so when people drive this new Ranger PHEV, I think they're going to be shocked. It'll be so much faster than they think.
Really?
Yeah, in a big heavy truck, you're like, wow, this is incredible.
It happens in Mustang Mach-E, right?
Yes,
so
yes.
It's very strong.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's
Same with
stronger than
Lightning.
the V8, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
oh,
the
for
Lightning,
sure.
the F-150
It's unbelievable.
Lightning,
I remember
right?
when the president drove the Lightning for the first time, he said, I've never been in a truck like this.
Yeah.
This sucker's quick.
It's unbelievable.
And I think the same thing for the PHEV. So I think you're going to see electrification going from like super efficient, like a Prius type solution, to much more diverse. We'll see performance versions. In the US, our hybrid F-150 has exportable power, which means you can power your house in the case the electricity goes out, or a job site for 6 days.
It's like a power plant, right?
Yes. And it's a mobile power plant.
Mm-hmm.
So this also opportunity happens when you go partially electric. I think that it's not necessarily a transition strategy. For some people it will be. For others, we'll just keep perfecting it because their duty cycle doesn't allow a pure electric to work.
Great. But Ranger is a very well-known pickup here in Brazil.
Yes.
It's a huge
Yes.
brand.
Yes.
Don't you feel afraid of, changing at something that it's so well-based?
I guess some people would, but not afford. We're not scared of electrifying a Mustang or putting an all-electric pickup truck, America's best-selling pickup truck.
Yeah.
We're not scared of PHEV and electrifying the Ranger. No, this is what we do. We always go forward. Always.
What can we expect for the next years
okay.
about cars? Because we have some cars in South America, like Ford Everest, for example, which is one of my favorites. I love it.
Yes.
And I mean, different kinds of technology.
Sure.
Can we expect new cars here in Brazil for the next year?
Yes.
Maybe. What can you tell us?
Well, I think the truth about our brand here is that you're just going to see a lot more choice in the off-road area.
Mm-hmm.
So, different sizes, different powertrains, different price points. You'll see more diversification of what we offer. The powertrains will start to change. They won't be just combustion or just a hybrid. There'll be other choices here in Brazil. I think you'll be excited about the choices, and that'll be the customer's choice. We won't force everyone to buy an electric or just a combustion ethanol engine. I think also on the work side, you'll see more diversity of our commercial lineup. Today we do very well with Ranger and Transit, but now you'll start to see us offer more choice. And I think that choice will be in those areas. We'll also see interior experiences also get more diverse. On the low end, maybe more simple experiences, and on the high end or average Ford, you'll see a lot more technology coming for customers here. I'm really excited especially about that. And I hope that we offer more software. In the US, we're over 1 million units of software now, and I think the most exciting technology for Brazil will be automation. Hands off, eventually eyes off. We're not very focused on robotaxis. We'll partner with other people, but we're very focused on eyes-off highway driving. So metaphorically, you push a button, the car drives for you on high speed on a highway, and you get time back. We think that's a bigger problem to unlock globally than a robotaxi in the middle of São Paulo.
For the next year, probably?
Coming
soon. Soon.
In the next year, I think you will just see we have some really exciting products. The PHEV Rangers really are big news.
Okay, great. And when we talk about the electric cars or even the PHEV cars, we have to talk about the Brazilian infrastructure, which is small.
Yes.
We need to improve in this area, right? That's one of the reasons that myself, I don't want to have 100% electric car today, but I really want to get there, to go to other cities and to go to the roads without having the concern, like, am I able to charge my car, to get there? So do you think the companies have to maybe help the governments to improve this infrastructure, building, stations or things like that?
I don't think that's a core competency for us. In the very early days, I think what Tesla did with the supercharger network was great.
Yeah, it happens, right?
Yeah, and that's why Ford joined the supercharger network. We actually changed our plug technology to match theirs because they had so much better experience charging. I think there are independent companies that will build out that infrastructure. If I look to Norway, it's probably the best example of a country that's in the north, it's cold. They have 50% plus pure EVs now. And how does their infrastructure look? Well, a lot of fast charging at stores. So when you go shopping, you have downtime, you charge your vehicle. You go to work, you charge your vehicle in Norway. I think it's a kind of natural law. On the highway, it's difficult, I think. So we'll have to live in this mixed electrification world for a while, but I'm not worried about it. Over time, it will get better. Will it get good enough that you can own only one car? I don't see that in the near term.
Great. So how's Ford facing the hydrogen cells and the different fuels, how are you studying these new technologies and what do you think about them?
Well, I think it's a great question. I mean, there's no better country in the world to show about alternative fuels than what your country has done for our industry. I don't think anyone 20 years ago would have thought that we could be 100% ethanol in a country as big as Brazil, but we are. But it was a real commitment by the government. I think hydrogen is a great technology for heavier vehicles, over-the-road trucks, medium and heavy-duty trucks. It's a great technology. Electrification is not a great technology for very heavy vehicles because the batteries have to be so big that you have big batteries carrying your big batteries, because the torque required to haul a heavy load or towing heavy things. I don't think pure electric in the next 10 years is going to be a good solution for heavy trucks or heavy pickups.
Because of the batteries, probably, right?
Yes.
Huge batteries.
Exactly.
Heavy,
it's
right.
too expensive for customers. So hydrogen is a very good solution. Similar to diesel, when diesel started, it was used by heavy trucks or farm, they would have their own infrastructure. They had their own tank on the farm or their own tank in a truck stop. I wouldn't be surprised over the next couple decades we start to have hydrogen infrastructure. But I will say we have the ICE infrastructure for gasoline or ethanol for all these years. Building out an electrical infrastructure is really expensive and hard. Coming up with a third infrastructure is going to be maybe a bridge too far. So it would have to be a specialty distribution of the infrastructure for hydrogen to work. But if you're a utility company, your vehicles come back to the same depot every night, you have heavy vehicles, bucket trucks repairing transmission lines, that's a perfect application for hydrogen. I think you'll see specialty applications for hydrogen fuel cell or even a hydrogen combustion engine for those kind of applications. And I think, Ford, like we always have, will continue to invest in that. But, frankly, hydrogen has been the future in my industry for 30 years. We've been talking about it for 30 years being the future.
Great. Well, we have another section here in our show, and we call Uncomplicated Business. It's something that we do in partnership with our sponsor, which is New Empresas, when we talk about technology on companies, So what would you say to the entrepreneurships that follow us, and in terms of technology, what they have to do in terms of AI or something that nowadays, you have to think about when you talk about technologies and business, especially small business? What could you say to these people?
Well, the car business, we tend to think of our retail customers as the most important. I think at Ford, I would challenge that thinking. When you're an entrepreneur with AI technology, think about a business customer as the fastest adopter of new technology. It's interesting, when we talk about software-defined vehicles, which segment, level 2 automation, hands-free driving on the highway, or productivity software where I can control the speed of the vehicle or even the access on the weekend, which software winds up being adopted faster, the B2B customer or the B2C customer? Winds up being the B2B customer. They use their vehicle for work. If they have software to use that asset better, they're going to buy more software than the retail customer who uses their vehicle maybe 5 to 10%. I think that's a metaphor for entrepreneurs. When you think about your technology and your business idea, why don't you think about business customers first, not consumers, but business customers. They use technology as a tool. They're more likely to pay more and adopt it quicker than a retail customer.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, thanks a lot for having us. It was amazing talking to you and understand everything is happening inside your company, and the whole industry. It was a great pleasure. And congratulations on what you're doing in Ford.
Thank you so much for your time. I love your show. And thank you for your advocacy for Mustang.
Great. We're both fans of it, right?
Yeah, you got it.
Thank you so much, Jim. It was a great pleasure.
Thank you.
E obrigado também você que acompanhou a gente em mais esse episódio super especial de No Lucro CNN, a primeira vez fora do estúdio, conversando com o CEO global da Ford, Jim Farley. Não deixa de seguir a gente nas redes sociais, @No Lucro CNN, me segue lá também, @Felipe.Ciani. Um beijo, até semana que vem, que você sabe que aqui com a gente, você tá sempre no lucro. Valeu, gente.
No Lucro CNN. Apoio. No Empresas. Sua rotina pode ser mais que apagar incêndios.
Pense bem. Pense CNN.
Olá, tudo bem? 4h40, hoje é domingo, 7 de dezembro. A gente atualiza agora as últimas notícias do Brasil e do mundo. O senador Flávio Bolsonaro minimizou neste domingo a reação negativa do mercado ao anúncio de que ele será o sucessor político do pai, o ex-presidente Jair Bolsonaro, na disputa ao Palácio do Planalto nas eleições de 2026. A Luciana Amaral tem os detalhes ao vivo aqui de Brasília. Oi, Luciana, bem-vinda, boa tarde.
Oi, Pedro. Boa tarde a você e a todos que nos acompanham aqui na CNN. Realmente esse anúncio sacudiu o mercado financeiro, tanto que a Ibovespa, nessa última sexta-feira, fechou em queda de mais de 4%. Foi o pior desempenho diário desde 2021. E vale ressaltar que, até então, a Bolsa de Valores vinha renovando recordes. Já o dólar registrou a maior alta desde outubro, fechou a R$ 5,43. Hoje, então, Flávio Bolsonaro buscou minimizar essa situação, essa reação. Ele disse ver a reação como algo natural, mas uma análise precipitada, isso na avaliação dele. Ele disse que o povo vai conhecer, abre aspas, um Bolsonaro diferente, um Bolsonaro muito mais centrado, um Bolsonaro que conhece a política, que conhece Brasília, um Bolsonaro que realmente vai querer fazer uma pacificação no Brasil, fecha aspas. Essa declaração foi dada hoje de manhã, depois que ele foi a um culto aqui em Brasília. E o anúncio, então, causou até mesmo divisão dentro da própria direita. Não são todos os governadores bolsonaristas que estão já apoiando Flávio Bolsonaro. Muita gente ainda se mostra, inclusive, reticente em relação a essa pré-candidatura dele. Flávio Bolsonaro, ele também deixou claro, então, que para essa semana agora ele quer tentar avançar com o projeto da anistia no Congresso Nacional, matéria que está travada por falta de consenso. Mas o senador, então, hoje, senador, ele falou que sim, que é pré-candidato. Ao mesmo tempo, ele disse que pode não ir com a candidatura até o fim, porque tem um preço a pagar e que amanhã, então, ele contaria qual preço seria esse. Mas vamos ver, então, agora exatamente o que ele disse.
Tem uma possibilidade de eu não ir até o fim, eu tenho um preço para isso, eu vou negociar, eu tenho um preço para não ir até o fim. Só que eu só vou falar para vocês amanhã. Imagina qual é o meu preço, quanto custa, aí eu abrir mão da minha candidatura.
Mas o senhor vai anunciar isso em algum evento?
Eu falo amanhã de novo a gente conversa, não tem problema nenhum. Eu só quero que vocês pensem, né?
Mas
o que é que está em jogo no Brasil e quanto vale eu retirar minha candidatura. Vamos conversar amanhã com o Valdemar, com o Rueda, com o Ciro Nogueira, o Rogério Marinho, que é o nosso líder, e vamos fazer o convite também ao Marcos Pereira nesse primeiro momento, para que todos possam conversar, sem compromisso de absolutamente nada, para que todos possamos ali trocar as nossas impressões e que todos vão ouvir da minha boca que o projeto que a gente vai colocar no papel, o projeto que vai ser vencedor, eu vou contar com eles.
O STF deve começar a julgar na próxima terça-feira o último grupo da ação penal sobre a tentativa de golpe de Estado. O chamado Núcleo 2 é composto por 6 réus. Segundo a Procuradoria-Geral da República, eles teriam sido responsáveis pela elaboração da minuta do golpe, pelo monitoramento e pela proposta de neutralização violenta de autoridades, além de articulação dentro da Polícia Rodoviária Federal para dificultar o voto de eleitores da região Nordeste nas eleições de 2022. A gente vai ver agora quem faz parte desse grupo. Fernando de Souza Oliveira, delegado da Polícia Federal e ex-secretário executivo da Secretaria de Segurança Pública do Distrito Federal. Felipe Garcia Martins Pereira, ex-assessor especial de assuntos internacionais do ex-presidente. Marcelo Costa Câmara, coronel da reserva e ex-assessor de Jair Bolsonaro. Marília Ferreira de Alencar, ex-diretora de inteligência do Ministério da Justiça na gestão de Anderson Torres. Mário Fernandes, general da reserva e ex-secretário-geral da presidência e aliado próximo de Bolsonaro. E Silvinei Vasques, ex-diretor-geral da Polícia Rodoviária Federal. A Assembleia Legislativa do Rio de Janeiro deve decidir amanhã sobre a prisão do presidente da Casa, Rodrigo Bacelar, que foi detido pela Polícia Federal. Bacelar está preso preventivamente desde a última quarta-feira por suspeita de vazar informações sigilosas de uma operação policial contra o tráfico de drogas. Durante a operação, a PF apreendeu mais de R$90 mil em espécie no carro oficial usado por ele, além de 3 celulares que vão passar por perícia. Pela Constituição Estadual do Rio, a Alerj é responsável pela análise do caso e decide por maioria de votos se o parlamentar vai ficar preso ou não. A defesa de Rodrigo Bacelar nega que ele tenha obstruído as investigações sobre facções criminosas ou vazado informações sigilosas. Homens armados invadiram a Biblioteca Municipal Mário de Andrade, na região central de São Paulo, neste domingo e roubaram obras de arte. Adriana De Luca tem os detalhes ao vivo de São Paulo. Oi, Adriana, bem-vinda. Boa tarde.
Oi, Pedro. Boa tarde a você, boa tarde a todos que nos acompanham. Esse assalto aconteceu hoje por volta de 10 horas da manhã, quando a Biblioteca Municipal já estava aberta ao público. De acordo com a Polícia Militar, 2 homens armados chegaram no local, renderam funcionários e um casal de idosos e anunciaram o assalto. Os homens conseguiram levar 13 obras de arte. De acordo com a Secretaria Municipal de Cultura e Economia Criativa, foram 8 gravuras de Henri Matisse, 5 gravuras de Cândido Portinari. Essas obras faziam parte de uma exposição do Museu de Arte Moderna com a Biblioteca Municipal Mário de Andrade. De acordo com a Polícia Militar, os criminosos conseguiram fugir do local, não houve disparos, ninguém ficou ferido, mas eles conseguiram levar essas obras de arte. Há câmeras de segurança no local, essas imagens estão sendo analisadas pela polícia, uma perícia da Polícia Civil também foi realizada no local. De acordo com a Secretaria da Segurança Pública de São Paulo, houve um reforço policial ali no entorno da biblioteca, que é a maior biblioteca municipal de São Paulo, uma das maiores do Brasil. É um local bem tradicional aqui da cidade de São Paulo. A população ficou assustada com esse assalto em pleno domingo, com a biblioteca aberta. E agora a polícia está realizando diligências para identificar, prender esses criminosos e, o mais importante, claro, encontrar essas obras de arte, né, Pedro?
Sem dúvida. Adriana, obrigado pelas suas informações. Bom trabalho para você em São Paulo. A Agência Internacional de Energia Atômica, ligada à ONU, afirmou que a estrutura que protege Chernobyl, palco do pior desastre nuclear da história, não é mais capaz de conter a radiação no local após um ataque de drone em meio à guerra na Ucrânia. Américo Martins tem os detalhes ao vivo, direto de Londres. Oi, Américo, bem-vindo. Boa tarde.
Boa tarde, Pedro. Boa tarde a todos que nos acompanham. A Agência Internacional de Energia Atômica fez esse alerta que vai levar muita preocupação aos governos ali da região e à população na Ucrânia. Essa estrutura foi construída em 2016, entre 2016 e 2018, e é uma estrutura de aço e concreto que protege o reator que explodiu em Chernobyl em 1986, quase 40 anos, no pior acidente nuclear da história. Essa estrutura foi colocada lá justamente para conter a radiação, porque existia uma estrutura anterior que também já não dava mais conta desse controle da radiação. O problema é que nós temos conflitos entre os exércitos da Ucrânia e da Rússia, e em fevereiro desse ano drones atingiram essa estrutura que protege a usina de Chernobyl. Eram drones russos e os ucranianos acusam o Kremlin de tentar atacar especificamente aquele local, justamente para provocar um vazamento dessa radiação. A Agência Internacional de Energia Atômica não informou se houve algum tipo de vazamento da radiação, mas pediu reformas urgentes nessa estrutura. Também pediu, obviamente, para que os dois lados não ataquem mais essa estrutura e não entrem em conflito na região dessa antiga usina nuclear. Existem outras usinas nucleares também em operação na Ucrânia, uma delas, Zaporizhzhia, é a maior da Europa, e também tem sido alvo frequente de ataques entre os dois lados. Então, a guerra fazendo aí uma ameaça muito grande com relação a essa possibilidade de radiação. Pedro.
Sem dúvida, Américo, obrigado pelas suas informações, bom trabalho para você em Londres. A erupção de um vulcão no Havaí acabou atingindo uma câmera que gravava o fenômeno. Nas imagens é possível ver um jato de lava saindo de uma das crateras do Monte Kilauea, um dos mais ativos do mundo. A coluna de fumaça e detritos ejetada foi tão forte que acabou atingindo uma câmera de um instituto de geologia americano. Um aparelho, operado à distância, chegou a desligar durante o incidente. O vulcão Kilauea está em erupção intermitentemente há quase um ano. Na Alemanha, centenas de pessoas vestidas de Papai Noel participaram de uma corrida de rua neste domingo. Adultos e crianças competiram no evento no leste do país. O único requisito para participar era a roupa de Papai Noel. Os participantes, estimado em cerca de 900, são separados em categorias de distância entre 2,5 km e 10 km. Ao final do percurso, todos ganharam vinho quente e chocolate. E por falar em corrida, a Fórmula 1 tem um novo campeão mundial. Pois é, o piloto britânico Lando Norris, da McLaren, conquistou o título pela primeira vez. Ele terminou a prova em Abu Dhabi na terceira posição atrás de Max Verstappen, que foi o primeiro, e do companheiro de equipe, Oscar Piastri, que ficou em segundo. Mesmo assim, ele superou os dois no número de pontos e se consagrou campeão mundial. O título mundial de construtores já havia sido conquistado pela McLaren, o primeiro título de Lando Norris pela McLaren. Essas foram as principais notícias do momento. Fique agora com o CNN Séries Originais Vinhos de Portugal. Não perca. A gente volta em breve. Até mais.
Pense bem. Pense CNN.
De que ano é, Paula?
1982, vamos provar?
Vamos.
8.000 anos. A história do vinho atravessa épocas, culturas e modos de fazer.